Draft Chaff. Coming up this week.
Before its other effects, though. That's so...
Yeah. Judge. I don't know. Clean. This is going to be a top comment for sure, right?
Don't ruin Bloomburrow for me.
Oh, man. I want to see that at some point.
Jace has a little bit of oil on him. Oops.
What's up, aficionados? Welcome back to Draft Chaff. This is episode 208. I'm your host, Ben, and coming at me is Tyler. What's up, dude?
Dude, I'm so pumped for this set. This is probably the most excited I've been for a set in a long time. It feels like real magic. I feel like we're back in like a fun fantasy world.
Yeah, a true return to form. We've got these two-color archetypes. They're all adorable. And honestly, I'm excited for this format breakdown. We're going to discuss the main vectors, the archetypes, everything you need to know to be ready for your pre-release or set release day or grinding on Arena or whatever it is. Before we get into that, a couple intro reminders. Patrons, thank you. Y'all are the best. Check out Patreon if you'd like to support the show. We've got options over there for $1 a month. That's like a cup of coffee once every 4 months. If we provide at least that much enjoyment, maybe consider hopping on over there. We got cool perks like stickers, other giveaways, and of course the Patreon helps support the bounty boards, which well, the bounty board is done for this one. By the time this episode goes live, the bounty board will have been posted, and you can see all the bounties that you need to collect in order to win some free packs. For those that aren't familiar, the bounty boards are sort of achievements you can earn in the set. And when you win them, you get points, and whoever has the most points at the end gets packs sent to them, or maybe just money, so you can buy your own packs. But so you're being rewarded for stuff you want to do in this set already. One of the ones in this set that we're pretty stoked about is trying to have your opponent draw out from gifting them a card. I don't know how doable that's going to be, but also hop in the Discord. Discord is a great place to be to hang out with all the aficionados. Come chat about Magic, chat about life, and honestly, make sure you get in our giveaway for the copy of the One Ring. Those that are listening that have not yet entered, all you got to do is join the Discord, hop in Gen Chat, and tell us your favorite Magic card. If you do that, you are automatically entered into a giveaway of a real copy of the One Ring. And will its price tank when it's banned inevitably? Probably, but it'll still be good in Commander. So it's never going to go under like $70, I don't think. So for format breakdowns, we use vector theory. We're going to talk about vector signposts. These are the two color cards, the common and uncommon for each color pair, and sort of glean from these what the designers of the set are telling us we should try to do for each color pair. And of course, that's what you should probably try to do for pre-release and when you're building these in draft. We'll talk about some key cards that we think fit into that vector once we sort of know what the deck is about. And vector theory might not be familiar to everyone listening. There's a bunch of articles about it online that we've written. Vector theory is about drafting, building, and playing with a singular game plan in mind. And the best way to find out what your deck's vector is, or even what an individual card's vector is to just ask, when is this card at its best? What do I need to do to make this card maximize, to have it perform as best as it can? Because let's be honest, they don't really print bad cards anymore. Every card is at least somewhat playable. It's not like 20 years ago where there'd be like a 4-mana 1/1 with an ability that just did nothing, right? But you got to know when to make these cards good and what to do in order to get yourself in that sort of scenario. So we will be approaching this format breakdown with vector theory in mind. By the way, those that are watching on YouTube, you can already see how adorable this little graphic is. But everyone listening, feel free to hop over to YouTube to watch this as well if you'd like to see the cards. Those that are on Spotify, we have Spotify for video. So just take a look at your phone. Let's start by jumping into the mechanics. Maybe I should say hopping in to the mechanics. We've got Offspring here, and we've got Warren Warleader. This is a format of 4/4 Mythic. It lets you win the game, but the interesting text on it is Offspring 2. It says you may pay an additional 2 mana as you cast the spell. If you do, when this creature enters, create a 1/1 token copy of it. Which that's going to be pretty interesting depending on what abilities the creature has, right? So this one has a thing where it says whenever you attack, choose one, and then there's a whole bunch of good options that let you win the game, which are obviously good to stack up. There's a rare bat that's a Dark Confidant effect, right? Where you flip the top card and lose life equal to its mana cost. So there's interesting play to these. Do you want to have that second option for the bat? Maybe, maybe not. Do you want to have it for the War Leader? Definitely, right? And then there's some other lower common ones that have offspring more as like a curve consideration. One that has offspring 1 that you can cast as like a 3-drop or kind of like a 4-drop and then make a 1/1 token copy of it. So it seems really flexible. I do think it's an inherently aggressive mechanic, but this is sort of like a good curve mechanic, right? You're always going to be able to look at your offspring cards and say, all right, where on my curve does it make the most sense to play this? If you have no other 4-drop, you'll cast the Whirlwind on turn 4 probably. But if you have something else, then you may as well wait until turn 6.
The next mechanic we're going to look at is Valiant. Our example here is her Heartfire Hero. It's a 1/1 for 1 red mouse soldier. Valiant is basically heroic, just worse. Whenever you target these creatures, you're going to get an ability. The example here on Heartfire Hero, whenever it becomes the target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, put a 1/1 counter on it. The downside to this card is it's only once per turn. In the past, we had sets like Theros with Heroic, where you could trigger it multiple times per turn. One of the vectors actually in the Draft Chaff cube is based around that mechanic. So I'm curious to see if any of these cards can fill those slots.
Next up, we've got Expend. Brambleguard Veteran is 1 green for a 3/4. It's a Raccoon Warrior at uncommon. And it says whenever you expend 4 raccoons you control, get 1/1 and gain vigilance until end of turn. And then in parentheses here, it says you expend 4 as you spend your 4th total mana to cast spells during a turn. So notably, this is not activating abilities. This is casting spells. It doesn't care how that happened. Maybe you tapped off 4 mana to play a 4-drop. Maybe you played a 2-mana combat trick and then followed up with a 2-mana creature. Notably, this does not work if you tap all 4 lands and then cast a 3-drop. That's not how that works. So this is, I think, also an inherently aggressive mechanic. It's mostly showing up on raccoons. But what I noticed is that this is going to be good on your first main phase, right? Because you want, for example, Brambleguard Veteran to trigger during your first main phase so that it gets the bonus before you attack with it, right? So it attacks as a 4/5 vigilance for 3, which is honestly huge, right?
Next up, we have Forage. This is a mechanic basically with the squirrels, which makes sense. They like to forage in winter. To activate the Forage, you have 2 options. You can either exile 3 cards from your graveyard or sacrifice a food token. And a lot of the squirrel cards either revolve around milling yourself or creating those food tokens to activate the abilities. The example we have here, we have Feed the Cycle. It's a 1 colorless, 1 black pip for an instant that says an additional cost to this spell, either forage or pay an additional black. And it's destroy target creature or planeswalker. You're just usually getting, it's like, I guess everything comes back to kicker, right? You're getting additional benefits for paying an additional cost here. You can pay this for a classic murder, or you can reduce the cost by foraging.
Next mechanic is gifting. We're going to give some gifts to each other in this draft format. Consumed by Greed is a good example. 1 black for an instant at uncommon. You can gift a card. You can gift a bunch of things, mostly fish tokens that are 1/1 blue fish and cards. I think in Commander, you can gift a turn, right? Like gift an extra turn. That's obviously never going to happen in Limited. But gifting says you may promise an opponent a gift as you cast this spell. If you do, they draw a card before its other effects. So it's almost as if that card draw would be the first line of text on this card. And then that would happen. And then the rest of the stuff would still happen. You can't respond to that card draw or anything. If there's a thing that triggers off them drawing a card, it would happen like after this spell resolves, right? This card has to finish resolving before anything else can happen. So for example, if they draw a counter spell off that, they can't use it to counter this card's effects because by that point, the card is already resolving. So this one happens to say target opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control. If the gift was promised, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So it's kicker again, right? But it's a non-mana kicker. It's a kicker of, do you want to give your opponent a card or a fish? I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, in general, you do not want to give that many things to your opponent, and you will be very happy when your opponent gifts you a card. I like to think of it as like a sort of upside that you can sometimes tap into. For example, if you need to get back your bomb mythic rare, then yeah, maybe you should gift them a card. But otherwise, you're going to have to think of good ways to break the symmetry, or else it's probably not worth it to be gifting your opponent too many things.
All you have to do is build your deck better. And then it doesn't matter if you gift them a card.
Oh, I'm a diehard advocate of symmetrical card draw. The symmetry breaker being be better than your opponent, right?
Get good. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I guess we're going to dive into our 10 vectors at this point. We're going to start off with Azorius. My favorite vector, we have the birds. So we're going to have a signpost common and a signpost uncommon for each of these vectors that kind of delve into what the vector's trying to do. What's the goal? So for our common, we have Seed Pod Squire. It is a 3 hybrid white blue for a 3/3 flyer. It says whenever this card attacks, target creature you control without flying gets +1/+1 until end of turn. If we take a look at the uncommon, we have Plume Creed Mentor, a 1 white, 1 blue, 2/3 flyer. It says when this or another creature you control with flying enters, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control without flying. I named this vector On Your Wings because this isn't your true Azorius flyers. This vector wants you to have creatures that don't have flying. You want to bump those and pump those to give them flying, give them counters. It's a little weird. It's a little different build around. But if we look at the cards that I think synergize pretty well with this, you could see cards like the mice that have Valiant really like this because they're being targeted with these abilities. I think that's going to be your best way to kind of dive into this vector is get the payoffs from the birds and then get the payoff with Valiant triggering. Some of these Valiant cards let you draw cards. They're going to pump your creatures. I think that's the strategy you want to go here.
Yeah, this is interesting. If you were to fill your deck with just blue-white birds with flying, you would not be maximizing your cards, right? I mean, the ones that we just saw, you would not be getting max value off of either of these. Your deck would be worse for not having some ground creature.
It's very interesting. It's not your typical, blue-white flyers deck. It feels very against what we're used to with that, but it's kind of nice to break that, sameness of just we stick flying creatures into this limited deck and swing out. It's actually almost better because you kind of get to experiment with what abilities work really well. What am I trying to actually hit, get through with these flying abilities? For example, we could take a look at a card called Mouse Trapper. It is a 2 colorless, 1 white.
It is a tapper.
It is a tapper. That is true. It is it's a 3/2 mouse soldier with flash. It also has Valiant. So whenever Mouse Trapper becomes the target of a spell or ability you control for the first time, tap target creature an opponent controls. So if we're playing with these birds that give creatures without flying, those are targeted abilities. So Trapper is going to trigger when you target it with the flying ability. So you could tap down an opponent's flyer and swing in for a ton of damage. Another common we can take a look at is Finch Formation. It is a 2 colorless, 1 blue for a 2/2 bird scout. It has Offspring 3, and when it enters the battlefield, target creature you control gains flying until end of turn. So you can see all these birds want to do is make their friends fly. And I'm thinking Mice is going to be your best build around just because that Valiant ability cares about being targeted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems better than trying to target some of the other blue creatures like the rats and the frogs. Those don't seem to align very well with this.
Yeah, I was looking for some effects that, if you deal damage to a player, draw a card. Any effect like that where you're trying to get evasion and getting a benefit off that seems great. But yeah, the birds and the mice, they seem to be best friends here.
We've got Mind Drill Assailant here. 2, and then hybrid blue-black, so 4 mana total. It's a 2/5 creature. It's a rat warlock at common. It has Threshold. As long as 7 or more cards are in your graveyard, Mind Drill Assailant gets +3/+0, and you can pay 2 and then hybrid blue-black to Surveil 1. Surveiling is scrying, but you can put it in your graveyard instead of back on top. Cool card. Seems a little underpowered, but this can be a 4 mana 5/5 if you can achieve Threshold 7. The rats are clearly going for Threshold, right? And Threshold, getting 7 cards in your graveyard, the type does not matter. It could be lands, creatures, stuff's going to die. But you do need to do some work to make Threshold happen. Just speaking from limited experience, this would only naturally happen by maybe turn 10. This is the mid to late game after lots of things have traded off. So that does give us another clue as to the vector of the rats. They're not going to be that aggressive. They're not looking to build out a wide board, have nothing die, and then attack. They're looking to use removal spells, self-mill, spend time trading cards off with your opponent to fill up your graveyard, and then a 4-mana 5/5. That would be pretty good once you're in the late game and you've already traded off a bunch of resources. We also have Tidecaller Mentor. This is 1 blue-black for a 3/3. It's a rat wizard at uncommon. It has Menace and then Threshold. When it enters, by the way, it's changed to just enters, no longer enters the battlefield. That's going to take a while to get used to. When it enters, if 7 or more cards are in your graveyard, return up to 1 target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So on the front side of it, it's a 3-mana 3/3 menace that's a little hard to cast unless you're in blue-black. That's pretty good. It's a rat. There'll be ways to attack with it and get value. But if you have Threshold, it's also a mana war. Seems great. So some things that work well with this. Let's take a look at Mind Whisker. 2 and a blue for a 3/2 uncommon. It's a rat wizard. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, Surveil 1. So if you have Mind Whisker in your deck, you probably want to be able to play a little defensively to be able to take the time to self-mill and Surveil to achieve Threshold, because then this has Threshold. As long as 7 or more cards are in your graveyard, creatures your opponents control get -1/-0. Now, that doesn't sound like much, but anyone who has played against this effect is rolling their eyes right now, because this is way stronger than it looks, and it's hard to lose when you have this sort of effect going. And this is an uncommon. What if you get 2 of them and stack them? Like, how do you die from there? Your opponent can't attack you. We have Persistent Marshstalker is another card that seems relevant for blue-black. This is 1 in the black. It is a 3/1 Rat Berserker at uncommon. It says Persistent Marshstalker gets +1/+0 for each other rat you control. And Threshold. Whenever you attack with 1 or more rats, if 7 or more cards are in your graveyard, you may pay 2 in a black. If you do, return Persistent Marshstalker from your graveyard to the battlefield, tapped and attacking. That seems real nice, because, it gets 1/0 for each of the rat you control. Good chance you're playing this in blue-black, where maybe you have 2 other rats, then this comes back as a 5/1. They can't ignore it, right? And it does trigger off 1 or more other rats, so you could even do sort of like a chain where you attack with 1 rat and get this back and then trade it off. Then you attack with another rat and get this back and trade it off. And by the time that becomes relevant, you probably would have 7 or more cards in the graveyard. This is the sort of card that you would want to trade off early and then maybe look to get back in the late game. Blue-black seems like a cool sort of tempo-y, but also definitely wants to play a bit of a longer game, self-mill, trade things off, and then power out through the late game.
All right, next we're going to take a look at our Rakdos vector. I'm calling this one the Cold-Blooded Killers, because we're dealing with lizards here. Our common signpost card, we have Cindering Cutthroat. It is a 2 colorless hybrid black-red for a 3/2 lizard assassin. So when this enters, it enters with a 1/1 counter on it if an opponent lost life this turn. You can also pay 1 and then 1 hybrid red-black to give it menace until end of turn. We could take a look at Fireglass Mentor. It is a 1 black, 1 red for a 2/1 lizard warlock. It says at the beginning of your second main phase, if an opponent lost life this turn, exile the top 2 cards of your library. Choose one of them until the end of the turn. You may play that card. So yeah, this vector really cares about dealing damage to your opponent. You're going to probably want to play a lot of your cards main phase 2, because you're going to want to deal damage to them during that combat step to really get a lot of these abilities to trigger off. Yeah, a lot of this ability seems pretty one note. You're really just trying to deal damage. It's very similar to Spectacle from Ravnica, which is you gain an additional effect if your opponent was dealt damage this turn.
Mm-hmm. Who would have thought Rakdos is trying to deal damage? This is a
classic, and they're lizards
real
too.
Creative. The Cindering Cutthroat, an inflection point there seems like whether you can land a 2-drop before you cast this on turn 3. If you play this on turn 3, it's sort of embarrassing with nothing prior. But if you have that 2-drop before it and get the damage in, this one particularly looks like it's going to look for a good 1 and maybe even 2 drops that can guarantee damage. So maybe pingers. If
we take a look at the cards that I think are relevant to this vector, we can look at cards like Blooming Blast. It's a colorless and 1 red for an instant. It has Gifted Treasure. And then it says Blooming Blast deals 2 damage to target creature. If a gift was promised, it also deals 3 damage to that creature's controller. This vector doesn't care about damage being dealt via combat damage. It can be damage from any source. So this will trigger all those effects. It's not great to give your opponent mana, but if it's able to set off a ton of your lizards, it might be worth it in the end, and you can kill something on their side of the field. One of the best lizard payoffs I like is Thoughtstalker Warlock. This card's great. I mean, you especially, Ben. This is a 2 colorless, 1 black for a 2/2 lizard warlock. It has menace, and when it enters, choose target opponent. If they lost life this turn, they reveal their hand. You choose a non-land card from it, and they discard it. If you didn't deal damage, they just discard a card. So this is Thoughtseize on a stick, right? Like, it seems pretty good.
They fixed grief. What was this to do? Not love this card?
New grief just dropped
for standard. I mean, they're not banning this one. This is a disgusting curve with some of the 2-drops in this format where this has menace. Like, it's just going to keep enabling everything else. Man, really push card. Next up, we have Trash and Smash, our raccoon vector, and it's red-green. I love what they did here. They made raccoons these, like, trash warriors and trash warlocks. Like, they wear trash and they build weapons out of it. And in the story, they were, like, summoning trash storms to, like, throw stuff at their opponent. Funny stuff, right? We have Junk Blade Bruiser here as our hybrid card. It's 3, then hybrid red, hybrid green, hybrid red, hybrid green, so 5 mana total. For a 4/5 trample, it's a Raccoon Berserker at common. It says whenever you expend 4, Junk Blade Bruiser gets +2/+1 until end of turn. Wow, that's a lot less text than I'm used to reading on these cards. So it's a 5 mana Colossal Dreadmaw if you can expend 4, a 6/6 Trampler, which is a historically pretty good stat line. We have Wandertail Mentor as our mentor here. By the way, for those that haven't picked up on it, each of these signpost uncommons is a mentor. That they all say mentor on them is like their thing. So they're all mentors of some kind.
I'm just learning this for the first time now too.
Yeah, it's funny. It's cute that way, right? I like the symmetry that they build in these sets. So Wandertail Mentor is red-green for a 2/2. And it says whenever you expend 4, put a +1/+1 counter on Wandertail Mentor. And then it has tap to add red mana or green mana. I love it when they make mana dorks that tap for multiple colors. I love it when they make mana dorks that have relevant late game abilities. Check. Nothing else to care about here. But a big part of Wandertail Mentor is that this naturally curves into a 4-drop on turn 3. Notably, you can expend 4 without 4 lands in play, right? So you probably wouldn't be expending 4. I don't know if there's any 1-drops that care about it, but this does get you ahead on mana and maybe allow you to drop a couple cards that care about expending 4 and then expend 4 on the next turn. Definitely seems like a mana-hungry archetype, so sure this vector will be happy to have a good 2-mana dork that no one else will really want. The other green decks probably can't make as good use of it. We kind of already talked about Brambleguard Veteran, the 1 green 3/4. I want to talk about it again, actually, because I think it's a trap. Unless you're heavy into green, I'm talking like 10 green sources, I don't think you should put this in your deck and expect to cast it on turn 3 all the time. Having double green Pip on turn 3 is more difficult than it might seem. And there's not that many common fixing lands in this set. It's not like Outlaws of Thunder Junction with common tapped dual lands. Without common tap duels, being able to land a double pipped card on turn 3 is a lot harder than it seems. So be wary of this card. It can attack as a 3-mana 4/5, yeah, but you might not. You might get punished for it. That's all. And now take out the trash. Raccoons obviously love the trash, right? So we've got 1 in a red, an instant at common. It says take out the trash, deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If you control a raccoon, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. So I see take out the trash as not only a good just lightning strike type removal spell that also lets you sort of rummage through your library. And I like that the raccoons are rummaging. That makes sense too. But this could also be the 3rd and 4th mana you spend on spells in a turn, right? Maybe you did land your Brambleguard Veteran, right? You got your 3-mana 3/4 down. And then this just says raccoons you control. Oh, it's all of them? Hold up. This card, all right, I take back what I said earlier. Yes, you may not land it on turn 3, but this card is a little better than I expected. All of them?
Man, you got to read the cards if we're going to explain the cards here.
Okay. Well, hear me out. Let's say you got a couple raccoons in play, right? And you got your Brambleguard veteran on turn 3. Say you got lucky. Say you play a 2-drop in your first main phase, and then you have up green, red mana. You have up two lands. Your opponent has to wonder when they see you attack with a Brambleguard veteran and they have like a 4/4 blocker or something. They have to wonder, do they have take out the trash? Because if you have take out the trash and then they go to block, then you kill their other creature, your raccoons get buffed, you eat their thing, and you get to rummage. That would be a total blowout. You would never come back from that sort of thing as the opponent. So I like having a couple instants in the raccoon deck to help those out.
I think we should take a look at the flavor text of Take Out the Trash as well. I think it's quite funny. It says disgusting, revolting, effective, which I think is very true for this card.
Yeah, very apt. I will say those 3 words when it's cast against me pretty much every time.
All right, next we're going to take a look at the green-white vector. I'm calling this one Bunny Palooza. This is your pretty stereotypical go wide vector. If we take a look at the hybrid card, we have Head of the Homestead. It is 3 and then 2 hybrid green-white, green-white. And it creates a 3/2 rabbit citizen. When it enters, you're going to create 2 1/1 white rabbit creature tokens. Go wide. Next, let's take a look at the mentor card for this vector. It is Burrow Guard Mentor, 1 green, 1 white for a star rabbit soldier token with trample. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures you control. Like, these 2 cards are just so, like, this is just so green-white. Go wide, create a big one equal to the amount of creatures you control. It's so classic.
So this obviously always counts itself. But then if you say land the Head of the Homestead and you have nothing else in play, that's a 2-mana 4/4 trample. That seems insane.
Seems pretty good. I know the trample is so relevant on this. Like, a lot of these times for these, big, equal to the amount of creatures you control, they usually don't have trample, and it feels really bad to just swing out and get chumped. Let's take a look at some of the cards that I think are pretty relevant to this vector. First, we have Druid of the Spade. It is 2 colorless, 1 green for a 2/3 Rabid Druid. It says as long as you control a token, it gets +2 and trample. It seems pretty good. It's not really doing the go wide, but this vector also cares about tokens. You're not just going wide, you also want those tokens to kind of set things off. And speaking of tokens, we have the card called Hop to It. This is a 2 colorless, 1 white for sorcery that says create 3 1/1 white rabbit tokens. Nice and simple, go wide.
Yeah. The Druid of the Spade seems like it'll basically always be turned on, and Hop to It seems like a really good rate for making these. Just 3 bodies for 3 mana, even at sorcery speed, that's just going to be good.
Yeah, and Druid of the Spade doesn't just care about creature tokens. It could be any token. You could have food tokens,
Good point. I would mention that Hop to It, a lesser podcast would make a Hawk Tua joke here somewhere, but we're above such.
We're above that, Ben.
Time to get batty with black-white. This vector might be the one I'm most excited for because it involves doing a couple things that I like doing, which is gaining life and then paying life for cool effects. So Moonrise Cleric is the hybrid card. It's 1 hybrid, so 3 mana total. It is a 2/3 with flying, and it says, it's a Bat Cleric, of course, a common. When it attacks, you gain 1 life. Nothing fancy about this. I like having this few lines of text on cards. After grinding so much MH3, this is honestly a relief. Something to note about these hybrid cards is that a lot of them could be played in either of their colors. The higher rate ones, for example, like the Raccoon, if you need a good top end in green or red, you can play it, but just know that it's functionally double pipped then. The thing about Moonrise Cleric, which I already sort of got on my soapbox about, is that if you have a double pipped 3-drop, you need to be careful about casting that. For example, I would never put this in a red-white deck because some of the times you're just going to have 2 mountains and a plains in your opener and be like, I don't know if I can cast this, and you probably won't be able to. So this is almost sort of intended to reward the black-white decks, to make it so that this is a guaranteed castable if you're in black-white, because even with 3 plains or 3 swamps, you could always cast Moonrise Cleric. The mentor for this vector is Starseer Mentor. 3 white-black for a 3/5 Bat Warlock at uncommon. And I gotta say, as an astronomer myself, love that I got the bat archetype. this is great. And then paying life and gaining life too. This one is checking on the boxes for me. Anyway, this is a 5-mana 3/5 flying vigilance. Already kind of in. At the beginning of your end step, if you gained or lost life this turn, target opponent loses 3 life unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card. Wasn't this a thing back in Amonkhet where it was like the curse of one of the gods? Wasn't that a thing? There was like a black aura that made you.
I was going to say, you're asking the wrong person
turn.
here, Ben. I started back with Adventures of the Forgotten Realm, so I actually never got to drop down cats.
Oh man, so listener, please let me know in Discord. I think there was a black aura. It was a curse. You would enchant your opponent, and it would make them do that every end step. And it was lose 3 life, sack it on them permanent, discard a card. And it wasn't very good as a 4-mana aura, but attached to a 5-mana 3/5 flying vigilance, it doesn't seem like it's going to be that hard to gain or lose life. I mean, look at the Moonrise Cleric. You just have to attack. And so many of these other cards functionally will trigger this, that I see this triggering basically by that point in the game every turn. Seems great. Now, I have a card here, speaking of 4-mana do nothing, that I'm suspicious of, but I'm interested in. Sinister Monolith. This is 3 and a black for an artifact. It's an uncommon. It says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Now, historically, that sort of effect can be backbreaking in multiples. This would just be, I mean, it's an uncommon. You're not going to be stacking these that often. It's not like, what was it, a couple sets ago in one of those Ravnica sets where this was a common sort of effect. Ill-Gotten Inheritance, I believe the card was. But this also has an ability where you tap it, pay 2 life, sacrifice it, draw 2 cards, activate only as a sorcery. So I see this as a guaranteed way to trigger every single bat effect that you have, because they all care about gaining or losing life. You will always trigger them every single turn. And it even is nice too. It gives you the chance to play one of the bats that cares about it in your first main phase, because this triggers during combat. You could even let it trigger for your combat, and then the second main, just crack it and draw some cards. So I see this as maybe like a consistent way of triggering them that also has a buyout in case you're starting to get desperate and you just need some extra cards. It is a 4-mana do nothing though. So
it is a 4-mana do nothing. This card's also relevant to the Lizard Vector because it's also dealing damage to your opponent. So you could play this kind of in both. We'll see how that format or how this card works out going forward.
Mm-hmm. We have Life Creed Duo here. This is 1 on the white for a bat bird at common. And no, it's not some unholy fused atrocity. It's a bat and a bird. So the duos, we're going to be seeing a lot of these. They sort of act as these typal, almost hybrid cards, right? It's splaying a couple of the main archetypes of the white cards, and bats and birds are both in white, and sometimes you'll want cards that can do stuff for both. This is a flying 1/2, and it says whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life, which is, the Soul Warden effect. Probably not going to care about that too much if you're playing just birds, but if you're playing bats, you will definitely care about having gained a life every turn.
All right, next we have, I think, everybody's favorite vector for this format. We have Aw Nuts. This is our squirrels. So let's take a look at our hybrid card first. We have Corpseberry Cultivator. Is 1 and then 2 hybrid, black green for a 2/3 squirrel warlock. This card says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may forage. And whenever you forage, you put a 1/1 counter on this creature. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty solid. Foraging is going to be interesting because you need either a food or to have cards in their graveyard. It's kind of a build around, but I don't know. People love squirrels, so I'm sure people are going to force this regardless of how efficient it is. If we take a look at the Mentor, we have Vine Reap Mentor. It is 1 black, 1 green for a 3/2 squirrel druid. It says, when this enters or dies, create a food token. So this is like, this is the marquee card because you need food tokens to activate those forge abilities. And this is going to give you 2.
Yeah, this also works if you have sacrifice effects. It doesn't mind dying to that, right? Or even just trading off early. Similar to blue-black, this vector wants a whole bunch of stuff in the graveyard. So if you're deciding whether to attack with the Vine Reap Mentor or hold back and trade off, I would tend towards holding back and trading off to put the Vine Reap Mentor in the graveyard. I mean, it sort of does all the things you want, right? Because you get the 2 food and a card in the graveyard to help eventually forge away 3 cards.
Yeah, and as we kind of noticed through some of these duo cards too, there's a lot of crossover here. Like the squirrels really want to put cards in the graveyard, and the rats really want cards in the graveyard. So we could talk about that more a little later, but just something to keep a mind on. So a couple of cards I thought were pretty relevant to this vector. We have Honored Dry Leader. It is a 1/1 Squirrel Warlock, or Squirrel Warrior, I apologize, for 2 and 1 green. It has Trample. When it enters, you put a 1/1 counter on it for each other squirrel and or food you control. So this is your kind of payoff for having, built up a nice army. It also says whenever another squirrel or food you control enters, put a 1/1 counter on it. This is your, standard typal card. It cares about having squirrels. Doesn't really fit into the forage synergy, but it's a nice payoff for squirrels.
It's actually kind of anti the forage synergy, right? Because you would have sacrificed all the foods to forage, and then if you top deck this thing, then you might be like, oh man, I wish I had those foods still, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting build around. I'm curious to why they would kind of put this in here, especially at uncommon. But I guess if you're hoarding food like a squirrel, it pays off. The next card I want to talk about here is Bone Cache Overseer. It is a 1/1 Squirrel Warlock for 1 black. It has tap, pay 1 life, draw a card. Activate if 3 or more cards left your graveyard this turn, or if you sacrifice to food. These are both the ways to set off forage. It's nice to just draw cards, especially for a 1-mana 1/1.
How about we do some leapfrog? I think it's so funny that they went with this. I wonder if this was one of the first pitches of the set. What would frogs do? Obviously, they would flicker themselves, right? The frogs care about leaving and re-entering the battlefield, and there's a whole bunch of cards that go well with it. Let's take a look at Pond Prophet. This is hybrid blue-green, so 2 mana total for a 1/1 Frog Advisor at common. When it enters, draw a card. Clean. This is going to be a top common for sure, right? Now, the thing about this is, if I was playing red-green, I might be a little suspicious of this card, because how often would you get to cast it on turn 2, right? Lily Splash Mentor is 2 green-blue for a 4/4. It's a Frog Druid at uncommon, and it has Reach. So 4 mana 4/4 Reach, pretty solid already. It also has 1 green-blue. Exile another target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it. Activate only as a sorcery. So this thing will jump your other frogs. Right here, we have a deck. If you just put 3 Lily Splash Mentors and 3 Pond Prophets in a deck, and then just fill that with other random blue and green cards, I'm guessing that's like a 6/3 deck at least, right? Let's take a look at Clifftop Lookout. If frogs are trying to bounce themselves, let's see what other good ETB effects we can get. This thing is 2 and a green. It's a 1/2 Frog Scout at uncommon with Reach. When it enters, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a land card. Put that card onto the battlefield tapped, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Can I just do it blinking this thing? Because that seems nasty. Ramp out all your lands. We also have Long River Lurker. 2 and a blue for a 2/3 Frog Scout. This is an uncommon. It has Ward 1. It also says other frogs you control have Ward 1. When Long River Lurker enters, target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. Whenever that creature deals combat damage this turn, you may exile it. If you do, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. So it gets to blink something. And it makes stopping that blink pretty hard by giving other frogs Ward 1. So this is a very parasitic archetype, right? These frogs care about their blinking, their jumping, their leaping, and that's kind of it. There's no graveyard nonsense, even though green can touch the graveyard thanks to squirrels. And blue, I guess, also cares about flying. I guess actually some of the birds could help the Long River Lurker. Well, it makes the thing unblockable. Whatever. This seems good. If you have the frogs deck, you're just going to be doing this, right? Chipping in with your Pond Prophet and then blinking it to draw another card, then blinking it with Lily Splash, getting more lands from Clifftop Lookout. Cute archetype. I like what this thing has going on.
It's your classic Simic value. That's really what it comes down to. Let's take a look at our Is It Vector here. This is another fan favorite, I think. I'm dubbing this one Utter Chaos because we're dealing with otters here. If we look at our hybrid card for this, we have Tempest Angler. It's 1 mana and then 2 hybrid blue-red for a 2/2 Otter Wizard. It says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a 1/1 counter on it. This is your classic Is It Spellslinger deck. Let's take a look at the mentor for this vector. It's called Stormcatch Mentor. It is 1 blue, 1 red for a 1/1 Otter Wizard. It has haste, prowess and says instants and sorceries you cast cost 1 less to cast.
Whoa.
Pretty solid for a mentor. Yeah. Does a lot. It pays for itself, or it reduces cost, and then the reduction of those costs also benefit it by casting instants and sorceries. It has haste. It's yeah. I mean, it's a classically, lightning is it feeling card.
Tempest Angler is basically the same exact card as Spellgorger Weird, which was a really strong common from, was it War of the Spark, I think? And then also as a third chapter of Ral and the Implicit Maze, it was good then too. But this kind of card can grow big really quickly. And Stormcatch Mentor, yeah, that's just Goblin Electromancer, except it has haste and prowess and is a little smaller. It's kind of interesting. Do you want to be sending that thing in, or would you rather have it sit back and like not risk losing your cost effect? I don't know.
Yeah, it's so tough. I mean, if you have really nice combat tricks, prowess is always kind of crazy to kind of like, a 2-for-1. Some of the cards I thought were pretty relevant to this vector. We have Pearl of Wisdom. It is a 2 colorless, 1 blue for sorcery. It says this costs 1 less to cast if you control an otter card. And it says draw 2 cards. Pretty basic, pretty simple. I mean, if you have the mentor out, this costs 1.
It's a 1 mana draw 2. Oh my god.
1 mana draw 2. That seems pretty good. We also have Harnesser of Storms. It's 2 colorless, 1 red for a 1/4 otter wizard. It says whenever you cast a non-creature spell or otter spell, you may exile the top card of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play that card. This only triggers once per turn. This is just great. It's going to keep your value engine going.
Even that only triggers once per turn. Let's be honest. If you can just chain into another otter, you'll just wait and cast it next turn, and then next turn, and the next turn. And I mean, what else is in the blue-red deck besides instants, sorceries, and wizards and otters, right?
And otters, yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about some nice mice. We have Veteran Guard Mouse as our red-white hybrid card here. This is 3 and then a red-white hybrid. So 4 mana for a 3/4 mouse soldier at common. It has Valiant. Whenever Veteran Guard Mouse becomes the target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, it gets +1/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. Scry 1. Seems okay. It's a little expensive, and it doesn't really have any way of protecting itself or safeguarding itself against, like a bounce spell. I'm a little suspicious of the rate on this one, but I mean, a 4/4 first strike, if that's what it's attacking as, that is a real threat that your opponent can't ignore. I just don't like that this is probably going to trade with like a bunch of 2 mana kill spells. The Mentor is pretty great though. This is 1 red-white for a 3/2 mouse soldier at uncommon. Pretty sick art. I don't know, mice were so intense, This thing has vigilance and haste, and it has Valiant. Whenever it becomes a target of a spell or ability for the first time each turn, put a 1/1 counter on it. Classic heroic. So that's a 3 mana 3/2 vigilance haste heroic. That's good.
Very good.
Let's see what we can do with these things. We've got Nilfgaard. This is 1 of the white for a 3/1 mouse soldier at common. It has Valiant. Whenever it becomes a target of a spell or ability for the first time each turn, it gets +0/+2 until end of turn. And it also has 1 sacrifice Nilfgaard, destroy target artifact or enchantment. This sort of reminds me of that 3/1 flash from Midnight Hunt ages ago, right? And that card was great. This 2 mana 3/1, it's going to attack for a whole bunch early. You can honestly threaten having a pump spell, and you can't just bluff it. I think red-white will need to make sure it has some number of pump spells in the deck. This is one where you're looking to get your opponent, right? You're looking to have them put their 2/2 in front of this and then say, gotcha. Like, here's my pump spell. I guess optimally, you want that spell to do something else. You want to like shock their thing. Well, I guess it has to target this. I don't know. There's ways to make this work where it's going to functionally trade your combat trick for their blocking creature. And then maybe they block and then you don't have it. And they have a good like a good enchantment or artifact or something. Then you just crack this and take it out and you still got your 1/1 off of it. Maybe after getting some damage in too. Now the mice, they both trigger off Valiant and have ways of enabling it. We have Brambleguard Captain here. 3 and a red for a 2/3 mouse soldier at uncommon. Not a great rate, but at the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature you control gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is Brambleguard Captain's power. So the captain can either give itself +X/+0, in which case it'd be a 4/3 for 4, not great. Or you have it sit back and pump up all your other people. So take a look at this with Nettleguard, right? You pump the Nettleguard, and then all of a sudden, Nettleguard is a 2 mana 5/3. That's a pretty beefy attacker.
All right, so that finishes our 10 vectors here for the set. Another thing I wanted to talk about, and we kind of touched on it a little bit, are the duo cards. I'm nicknaming these the match made in heaven cards.
These are cute.
But this kind of, this kind of leads us, like we have our signpost common and uncommons to lead us into vectors, but these also kind of hint at the specific vectors that overlap between some of these animals, I guess. We have Baker's Bane Duo, which is a 1 colorless, 1 green for a 2/2 squirrel raccoon. It says when it enters, create a food token, and whenever you expand 4, it gets 1/1 until end of turn. So this kind of hints at, like, hey, squirrels want food tokens and raccoons want to expand. There's overlap. We also have Glide Dive Duo, which is 4 colorless, 1 black for a 3/3 bat lizard. It says when Glide, it also has flying. It says when Glide Dive Duo enters, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So this is doing both things that the bats and lizard wants. You're gaining life and you're hitting your opponent for 2 life, or they're losing 2 life.
It's basically Siege Rhino.
Yeah, basically Siege Rhino with flying. Last here I have Kindle Spark Duo. This is a 2 colorless and 1 red for a 1/3 lizard otter. It has tap. Kindle Spark Duo deals 1 damage to target opponent. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, untap Kindle Spark Duo. So here we are, we're triggering the lizards by having our opponent lose life, and then we're having non-creatures be relevant by untapping this. And this is a card you kind of see from time to time in formats where it's like the untap, ping for 1 with non-creatures.
Yeah, the Thermo Alchemist, right?
Yeah, exactly, yes.
Yeah, these 3, I mean, this is really clean design, right? Like they are basically confirming the vector theory works here. They're saying, like, look at what each of these things is trying to do. I also think that'll make all of these cards pretty solid picks because you'll want them in either. And yeah, sure, Baker's Bane Duo doesn't do that much if you're expending 4 in like squirrels, for example. But you don't care because you got the food and that other part is just going to be incidental upside. Same with Glide Dive Duo, right? The bat deck won't care that you're hitting your opponent for, it's like, oh no, I don't want to do that. Like, it's upside, who cares? Now we have some villages. These are all at uncommon and part of the lands in this set. We have Lily Pad Village, Lupin Flower, Mud Flat, Oak Hollow, and Rock Face. Cool thing about these is that they each tap for mana for creature spells. So for example, let's look at Rock Face Village. This one can tap for colorless, which could be used to pay for devoid costs. Colorless Eldrazi. It does have the little. Are there Eldrazi here? Oh my God! Imagine if Eldrazi came here.
Don't ruin Bloomburrow for me.
Oh man, that I want to see that at some point.
Jace has a little bit of oil on him. Oops.
He's leaking. So Rockface Village, besides tapping for colorless, can tap for red, and it says spend this mana only to cast a creature spell. They all say that for their equivalent color. And then it also, this one says, pay red, tap it, target lizard, mouse, otter, or raccoon you control gets +1/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. So each of these has a little bonus for the 5 creature types that touch that color. And they all sort of have these small bonuses. I would say these are pretty high picks because if you're in that color at all, you know there will be creatures that you can target with this.
Yeah, I think some of these are better than others. The one you mentioned, Rockface Village, I mean, that's going to, you can give your lizards with Menace haste. You're going to be able to, set those off. It also targets, which mice care about with Valiant. Yeah, I think some of them are higher picks than others, but I'd say they're all great overall. It's always nice to have utility lands.
Couple more lands here to round out the fixing. Uncharted Haven. This one's a reprint, even though, as we just recently discovered, it is errata to just say when it enters taps, and then as it enters, choose a color, and then tap to add 1 mana of the chosen color. You can put this in your 2-color decks. Honestly, if I was playing red-white, I might not, because you want those untapped lands for the curve outs. A lot of low drop creatures in this set, 1, 2, 3 costs. Makes sense because, everything's small here. But if you are splashing or doing some sort of thing, you open a bomb. This seems like a pretty 2-color dependent set, but I don't know. Maybe we'll mess around with Uncharted Haven, see if we could do something. There's also Hidden Grotto. This has, when it enters, Surveil 1, and it can tap for colorless, or you can filter, pay 1, and then tap to add 1 mana of any color. I tend not to like this sort of thing. There was a similar one actually just pretty recently in Outlaws Thunder Junction. But that one I sort of liked because you were playing these big 5-color desert decks and you needed to be able to splash for things, and you didn't care if you were paying 1 extra mana because you were casting Bonnie Paul and you're going to win the game the turn after that. So this one I'm a little more suspicious of in like a strictly 2-color set. Surveilling would help with the squirrel and rat vectors, but besides that, I don't know.
Now we're going to take a look at the top cards at common that we think are going to be most relevant while you're drafting. We're going to start here with white. The first card we have is Banishing Light. This is a reprint. It says when Banishing Light enters, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until Banishing Light leaves the battlefield. You know,
Great
classic
card.
clean removal. Yeah, can't ask for
Non-land
more there.
permanent?
Yeah, it's true. Get rid of their Ral Otter if you need to. Next, we have a card called Sonar Strike. It is 1 white, 1 colorless for an instant. It says Sonar Strike deals 4 damage to target attacking, blocking, or tapped creature. You gain 3 life if you control a bat. Now, this is just good removal. You know, solid. It's nice that it hits tapped. Like if you draw this and they have a tapped creature that you want to get rid of before they're untapped, you just hit it. This is like a classic white card that you see.
I do actually have one big problem with it, and that's if you look at the art, we're seeing like a waveform coming out of the bat here, but I'm not sure if that's supposed to be a compression wave or what type of sound are they attempting to represent here? Because look at the distance that those wavelengths would not correspond to. Let's just keep going.
I was like, you're getting too scientific here, man. I don't know. Those look like sound waves to me. What do I know?
I mean, it's good art. I actually really like the composition of it. I love this sort of like this circular framing to it. But as a physicist, I have some issues with the way that they're.
As a physicist. The last common we're going to take a look at here is Warren Elder. It's a 1 colorless, 1 white for a 2/2 rabbit cleric. And it has an ability that is 3 colorless, 1 white, and it says creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. I mean, yeah, this seems like a pretty good payoff for the go wide that you're going to see, especially in the rabbit vector here. And this doesn't tap this either. Like if this is late game and you have 8 mana out, you can pump twice. Seems like a good payoff.
Curve this into hop to it, and then on turn 4, you're representing 8 damage. Our picks for top blue common. Let's start with Dazzling Denial. This is 1 in the blue, instant at common. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 2. If you control a bird, counter that spell unless its controller pays 4 instead. These types of spells have just been great in recent memory. Honestly, even in Outlaws, that one was really good too. Even though people were plotting and it wasn't as relevant as always. These types of effects are always pretty solid. We think this is no different, and it even has some bird upside. We also have Dire Downdraft. This is 3 in a blue. It's an instant, and it says this spell costs 1 less to cast if it targets an attacking or tapped creature. Nice little upside. Target creature's owner puts it on the top or bottom of their library. Of course, it is an instant, so you could do this on your turn as a 4-mana sorcery speed. Get that thing out of here. I don't want you to untap with it. Or you can wait and then as a 3 mana, make that thing go away. And this is a quote unquote bounce spell, but it does put it back in the library as opposed to hand. So it is, it is a 1-for-1. We also have Run Away Together. This is 1 in the blue. It's an instant. And it says choose 2 target creatures controlled by different players. Return those creatures to their owner's hands. A lot of targeting you can do in this set, right? A lot of interesting cards that have ETBs and bounces and all sorts of nonsense. Being able to rebuy that or even save something from a removal spell while bouncing on their things. This is a cheap and versatile spell.
All right, now we're going to take a look at the black uncommons. First, we have Dire Sight. It's a 2 colorless, 1 black for sorcery that says Surveil 2, then draw 2 cards, and you lose 2 life. This is like your classic read from bones, right? It's always nice to have card advantage. It's going to surveil first, so you can kind of set up what you're going to draw, which is nice. Next, we're going to take a look at a card called Savor. It is 1 colorless, 1 black for an instant. It says target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. Create a food token. I've seen a lot of these -2/-2s recently, and I think every time they've been pretty great. Even if you can't kill a creature, it's a nice little combat trick that could lead to a creature's death. Lastly, let's take a look at Nocturnal Hunger. 2 colorless, 1 black for an instant. It has Gift of Food. And then it says destroy target creature. If the gift wasn't promised, you lose 2 life. Yeah, it's like, would you rather your opponent gain 3 life or would you rather lose 2 life? 3 mana, instant speed removal, always great, especially a common.
you can engineer a scenario where your opponent has one blocker and you're about to swing for lethal. It doesn't matter if you give them the food if they're dead. Top red commons. We have Take Out the Trash. We've been over this one already. Roughshod Duo. This is 2 in a red for a 3/2 trample. This is a mouse raccoon. And it says whenever you expend 4, target creature you control gets +1/+1 and gains trample until end of turn. Notably, this cares about expending from the raccoons, and it targets. This isn't just for itself. This is any creature. So this thing doesn't even have to get in. You could put this on a flyer or something else, and or hopefully one of your mice. And just a 3-mana 3/2 trample. This seems like a really solid rate for a common. We have Agate Assault here. This is 2 in a red for a sorcery at common. Choose 1. Agate Assault deals 4 damage to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. And exile target artifact. So just being able to get rid of something for good in a set with some graveyard recursion seems nice. We have multiple vectors that seem to care about doing stuff with what's in your graveyard. The rats are trying to hit threshold with 7 cards. The squirrels are trying to squirrel things into the graveyard, I guess, and then exile them. So just having some graveyard hate seems pretty relevant here. Plus 3-mana deal 4, that's always a solid rate.
All right, next we're going to take a look at the top green commons. First, we have Cash Grab. This is 1 colorless, 1 green for an instant. It says mill 4 cards. You may put a permanent card from among these cards milled this way into your hand. If you control a squirrel or return a squirrel card to your hand this way, create a food token. Yeah, we just saw this effect in MH3. Malevolent, I can't remember off the top of my head, but
Rumble.
It was a Rumble. There we go. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a pretty solid card. You know, it's nice to dig for, find what you need. This is a permanent, so you can grab lands. And it also like really works well with the squirrel vector. You're putting at minimum 3 more cards into your graveyard and potentially creating a food token. Next we have Baker's Bane Duo. Again, we've talked about this one already. Next we have Longstalk Brawl. This is a 1 green sorcery. It has gift a tapped fish, and it says choose target creature you control and target creature you don't control. Put a 1/1 counter on the creature you control if a gift was promised. Then those creatures fight each other. Classic, green fight spell. It does target if you are in that Valiant vector. This also, you get that benefit as well. It's just nice cheap removal as long as you have a nice big body to deal with your opponent's board.
Sometimes that last counter could be relevant. The fact that fish is tapped, maybe you put that counter on, then are able to swing in for lethal after that too. Well, that's the set. Looking pretty good, I think. Looking like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree. It's so strange, like reviewing this set. It feels so slow compared to MH3, but I think I need that. I need to kind of like get back to basics. Like there's 1 line of text on some of these cards and it just says gain 1 life, and it feels so refreshing.
Draw a card, like
Draw
nice.
a card, yeah.
Clean. Let's hop into. Man, I'm just gonna be making frog and bunny like hopping jokes from now on. Let's dive. No, otters dive.
Otters dive, dude.
Let's get into. Let's do the listener question of the week. Wait, bunnies do. All right, we've been recording for too long today. Spurlow this week has asked if you could create a new land subtype, what would you name it? What do you think?
So yeah, I took this like a subtype is a mountain of forest. Is that the subtype of a land? And then I was like, I'll just think of like other things. Like what are the ones from 1? The spheres.
Yeah.
Spheres. Like okay, so let's go towards that. I was thinking of cards called Ruined. It's kind of like we could talk about like global warming type stuff. You could have like ruined forest, ruined mountains, and they would tap for colorless. I don't know how that would work. I don't know if that breaks rules. I'm not really a rules lawyer, but it could be great in those Eldrazi decks that care about like Devoid and stuff. You could fetch a forest that could tap for colorless.
Yeah, that's cool. It reminds me of like what was it? I think it was a common from one of the old Eldrazi sets, and when it entered the battlefield, you floated a mana of any color, but it tapped for only colorless.
Interesting. Okay.
And
yeah, similar.
Tapped. Yeah.
But if we get these cards like Forest, you could use like 3 wishes to fetch out, a colorless mana producer now.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I guess if I had to create a cycle, I would go with some sort of pain land. I actually really like these bolt yourself lands. Look, as an aggressive player at heart, I don't care what my life total is at any point in the game until the game is over. So I would say maybe some sort of land that lets you maybe bolt yourself This would be pushed. This would be something
Wait, bolt
stupid.
three damage, like actual bolt.
3.
Oh boy.
Like the backsides of the MH3 ones. But maybe it floats some mana when it enters. Now I'm thinking about that other one. So maybe you bolt yourself. Oh, this would be so busted though. They would have no types. You wouldn't be able to fetch them or anything. And make them legendary. That solves the problem. So it's a legendary land. You can bolt yourself when it enters, and there's 5, one for each color. It's boltable. When it enters the battlefield, you float a mana if you bolted yourself. Otherwise, it enters tapped, and you still float the 1, like of its color. Know what I mean?
So you're bolting yourself when you get 2 mana. You're saying because it enters untapped.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's tricky. Legendary though, I think.
The legendary is a good drawback. So yeah, so call them some sort of like weird temple. Oh no, we already have a cycle of temples.
Yeah, and they're
gates.
bad.
Wait, I don't know what to call it, but this would be a cool design, right? So usually you draw it off the top, you play it tapped, and then it floats a mana when it enters, and that's it. Or you could bolt yourself so that it comes in untapped, and you have 2 mana for that. I don't know. Maybe 3 damage isn't enough. Maybe it should be more than that, like 4.
I don't know. I mean, having that come in like turn 1, having 2 mana open. Maybe it should be it only produces colorless mana like the turn it enters to kind of slow it down.
The Eldrazi decks are rubbing their hands.
That's true. Eldrazi decks got enough.
Yeah. Let's dive into Teferi and Tibalt before we wrap things up here. How's your week been, dude?
Yeah, I was actually having a hard time coming up with a Tibalt, and I honestly don't know if I have one. I don't know. Yeah, it is good. But let's take a look at the rows. We have pre-release coming up. This is, I'm pumped for this set. Probably the most excited for a set I've been in quite a while. And also, one of my local stores, Nemesis Game and Comics, they're doing a boxing league for this set, which is actually like Wizard Run. It's like an actual WotC event they're doing. So,
that's interesting.
If you're unfamiliar with boxing league, it's everybody gets a box. We're doing Bloomburrow for this, and they build a commander deck from the cards they open from their box. We battle it out, play, and then usually at the end of every month or set period of time, you add 6 packs from a standard set, any standard set, to beef up that deck that you want to play. It's kind of this ever-evolving, ever-growing deck. It's going to be pretty interesting. And the fact that it's run by WotC, there's some nice prize support I've heard, so looking forward to that.
That's cool. I didn't know it was run by WotC. Yeah. I can actually think of a Tibalt that goes for both of us. We kind of whiffed at the RCQ over the weekend. That was
trying not to bring that up.
Okay, in that case, it was just me there. I whiffed on the top 8. It was close, but it was a bit of a bummer. MH3 sealed was honestly just such a mix where sometimes if you had a Guide of Souls, you would just go 4-0, or more realistically, you'd go 2-2. You'd go 2-0, then draw, and you'd be getting lunch while everyone else is freaking out about how they can possibly come back. But anyway, that did not happen this time. Missed on the top 8. Still fun though. Got to see a lot of friends there. That's always nice to see the recognizable local faces. My Tibalt. Well, wait, that was that's a hybrid Tibalt. My other Tibalt is that I have jury duty next week, and I'm hoping it gets canceled. We'll see if that actually happens. But my Teferi is that set release. Pumped for pre-release, very excited for all this tiny animal nonsense. And honestly, we have pre-release this Friday, but something I'm equally as excited for is the Outlaws of Thunder Junction double box Arena Direct. Because, I mean, how many boxes can you win off this? If you win it 3 times, that's 6 boxes. That's insane.
What happens if they run out of boxes? Has that ever happened before where like you have too many tokens and they're like, oops?
I have no idea. Then again, I haven't gotten my email about the MH3 boxes are won, so maybe I shouldn't be dabbling in this until I know that I'm actually on their radar and I'm not just some I hope I get those boxes because that was a lot of work. I don't want to lose out on 3 MH3 boxes. 4 even. With that, thank you, listener, for listening to our format breakdown for Bloomburrow. A lot of fun, cool cards in store. Very excited. Can't wait to see all the pre-release pools and cool decks that you build. Be sure to hop in Discord and show us. Post your pre-release deck. Brag about the cool stuff that you open. To do that, of course, you have to hop in Discord. Also, you should want to be in there anyway to enter our giveaway, right? Patrons, thank you as always. If you're interested in supporting the show on Patreon, hop over to Patreon/draftchaffpod. And you can follow us on Twitter. We're always posting random nonsense on there. I asked the judge call a little while ago. Oh man, there's like 15 replies. We'll get back to that later. Okay. Anywho, with that, happy pre-release. Okay, quick thing here before we hop off.
Oh boy.
It is oh my god, it is tradition to take a look at the comments from the previous set and see how we did for our top comments. That actually just so happens that our last set, we didn't do a format breakdown for MH3. The last one that we did was for Outlaws of Thunder Junction. That is actually the current draft set still. It's like standard draft set technically. So it just feels like it's been out for ages because it has. So our top picks were Mystical Tether, Take Up the Shield, and Holy Cow. We did nail Take Up the Shield and Holy Cow, but we missed on Mystical Tether.
Yeah, I'm a little shocked by that. I guess it was a little slow for the format. It didn't hit all non-land permanents either. But the fact that you could play it for flash speed it's kind of interesting that it didn't see more play.
Yeah, it wasn't actually Mystical Tether. Mystical Tether was fourth, but it was Trained Arynx that was actually second overall. It was Take Up the Shield as number one, Trained Arynx, and then Holy Cow in the third spot. In blue, we did equally well. So the top blue comment ended up being Phantom Interference, which we got right. Then Jailbreak Scheme after that, which we whiffed on. We had Harrier Strix, which honestly, I'm not going to tell you what common rank that was because, oh boy, that one missed. But blue just, it kind of struggled in the set as was. We had Take the Fall correctly in third place. Black, our 66% streak continues. We missed on Consuming Ashes. And honestly, I don't really know how, because just a 4-mana Exile and then Surveil as upside. I don't know what we were thinking. We put Mourner's Surprise instead, which was the 5th or 6th best. Second was Vault Plunder, and third was Desert's Dew. So we got those ones right. And then finally for red, we rounded out with a bit of a miss, a 33% correct here. We got Prickly Pear. Red was also kind of junk in this set, but we got Prickly Pear. That was the second top one. But the best one was Explosive Derailment. We were thinking Thunder Salvo, that you'd be able to do some cool storm stuff. And we really liked the Irascible Wolverine. That one was 6th-ish. It was actually Discerning Peddler of all cards, the 2-mana Rummager, if you can believe that. It was the top third comment.